How are you doing? This is Juan Carlos Santana from the Institute of Human Performance. We're gearing up for a big seminar. We want you to invite you in to IHP during a huge seminar so you can see how the education gets done here in South Florida at the Institute of Human Performance. Check this out. Our executive director, and that's my sister, Belkis Olsen-Handress, keeps everybody in check. The other one that's the glue of IHP, director of operations, is that young lady over there, Joyce Moberg. She is the glue that keeps this thing together. She knows actually a lot about a lot of things. She can just about do any job here at IHP. She's been with us since the beginning. Unbelievable friend, unbelievable asset to IHP. Right over here we have Steve Marandini, business developer. This guy is a whiz when it comes to integrating all of the technology with the educational content that we have. I got to tell you, for those of you that are in this inner circle, this guy here, what he's doing with the websites. We're starting with 3 new from scratch websites. The prices that we're going to be able to offer, the services that we're going to be able to render are beyond anything I could have even thought of. And Steve has all the abilities. He's ran huge corporations and been involved in many, many big projects. So this is the guy that's going to provide you the new look and feel of IHP across cyberspace. So Steve Marandini, latest edition. Handsome guy next to him is a part-time model, full-time IHP dude. Now this is one of our newest coaches, Andy Saraki. And Andy is basically the director of our sports training, handles all of the team, is responsible for handling all the sports team. 6 sports teams from Florida Atlantic University, Boca High basketball, Boca High baseball, Pompano High football, and swimming and whatnot. So he's in charge of scheduling, making sure that everything gets done. He's the glue that, that keeps IHP with the community and with the sports team. I believe our newest addition, really our newest addition, sitting over there, that pretty young lady, her name is Kathy, and she hasn't even been hired yet, but I hear from the people who are the bosses that she's a shoo-in. So she's here with us, and we're happy to have her. Next is Caesar. Caesar came from Panama, wanted to be involved with IHP, and bugged the living daylights out of me. Talk about a person who was persistent. We've got stories about he'd write me letters thanking me, telling me what he was doing in Panama, when he was coming. I'm going, I don't need to know when he's coming to Florida and, you know, if he's training his mom or his sister, but just always staying in touch until I said, you know, anybody with that kind of desire, that kind of passion, that kind of follow through is an asset here. And it turns out that this guy's a sleeper. He knows an enormous amount of sports, an enormous amount of sports training. He's like a silent giant. Doesn't say much, but can handle just about any job you throw at him. Has a business degree, finance degree, whiz on the computer, and can come out here and handle a 58-year-old man and a sports team like at the same time if you ask him to. So we're very happy that Caesar's here. Incredible asset to the team. That young lady, pretty young lady over there, that's Eliana. And Eliana does all our fulfillment. She's been wonderful ever since. Let's put it this way. We were in a fulfillment house. 30,000 square feet, 20 million people working there. They couldn't do the job that she's doing. So we brought everything over, brought Eliana in, and that's our staff. We have a lot more. Lily is up front, and she manages that whole front desk. So there is the supporting cast, and those are the people that make this place happen. All right. So, are you guys ready to have a good time? Yeah? Yeah? You're at IHP, man. Are you ready to have a good time? All right, now, welcome. My name is Juan Carlos Santana. I'm the director of the Institute of Human Performance, and we will be introducing some of the staff later on to you. Thank you. My dedicated staff is what makes this place what it is. All right? When we first opened up IHP, our goal was only one thing. And that was to become the mecca of functional training. We wanted to be at least 5 to 10 years ahead of the industry. And it's not something that we wanted to be 5 or 10 years ahead of the industry because of ego or anything. We just wanted to be free to create our own training philosophy, our own training environment, and to push the envelope as far as we could push it. Not as far as academics dictated it, not as far as research dictated it. We want it to be limited only by our creativity. And you can only do that when you come up with your own environment, and that comes at huge sacrifices. A lot of times, some of you may be familiar with our inner circle. It's a private club that we have. It's about 150 strong right now, and we provide 3 to 4 hours of education video. That group gets to preview all of our training methods, our research, the stuff that goes out way before it becomes printable. They get it. And one of the issues that I dealt with this particular month was opening up your own facility. People think that, oh, having that freedom is great. Let's open up our own facility. And sometimes they look at a small shopping plaza and go in there, try to get 1,000, 1,500 square feet, and they pay $3,000 to $4,000 right off the get-go. And I go, all right before you even say boo, how many personal training sessions do you have to make sure you hit just to have a key in your keychain? And when they start to realize the financial commitment that is needed, and then the emotional commitment that is needed, if you're working with other people, I'm telling you right now, as you guys will hear in the inner circle, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. There's an enormous amount of pressure that comes with owning your own facility. But we felt that that pressure and that risk was well worth what we were going to be doing. And I think in 6 years we've hit the mark. Right? We have mentorships that are honored by people from all over the world. We've had them here from Asia, Europe, Canada, South America, and all the islands, where they come here to learn our training systems. Okay? Why? Because we have the freedom to be creative. And that's a very cool thing. And I think that's one of the reasons that you're here today. Because you want to see what it is that we do and how we justify it. All right? We justify it with a scientific basis, but not necessarily with a scientific proof. Two separate things. You can extrapolate from a general body of knowledge of science to make sure that your training makes some scientific sense. But if you're one of these academic people looking for definitive research on anything, you will never find it. Because the most common word used in research is may. Right? And what is the last sentence in every single peer review research article? More research is needed to further elucidate the association between X and Y. Thank you. Basically, this is our little contribution that's this big to this huge body of knowledge, but we really don't know anything. We need to know more. And I can't train, and I can't live, and I can't create under that kind of restriction. So when somebody asks you for the scientific rationale, you can give it to you. But when somebody asks you for the scientific proof of anything that you do, anything that you'll learn in here, you have to ask them, well, give me the scientific proof behind a preacher curl. Has there been any research on it? No. Has there been any research on supine versus prone leg extension or leg curls or leg presses? No. Has there been any research on the difference between a prone and supine curl? No. So we have all these methodologies that are thrown out as scientifically proven that are really not. To give you an example, medicine ball training right now has 4 pieces of research. None of them validate the training. 3 of them were used to correlate jumping performance with a reverse scoop toss. That's it. But medicine ball is well accepted in track and field for many years. It was well accepted back in the days of the gladiator when medicine balls were pieces of leather with hair filled with sand. So it's got a long history of effectiveness and a long history of use, so long that a lot of people have said, well, it must be scientifically validated because everybody's doing it. And even the NSCA, that is scientifically validated, has books and sections on medicine ball trainings in their essentials. Where is the scientific proof? It doesn't exist. Where is the scientific theory? Well, then you can extrapolate. So everything we're going to do here today, and the whole essence of functional training, which I think we're pretty strong on, is scientifically supported but not scientifically proven. I first like to start with logic, okay? And give you the logic behind an exercise. Because if I do that, I can pretty much prove gravity to you. I don't think we have to start talking about the electromagnetic theory of the Earth's gravitational role with the sun, but gravity. You drop something, goes down pretty fast, we go on from there. All right? So first let's talk about the history of fitness and how we got here today. Right? As you know, once upon a time, all we had was function. All we had was function. But you didn't have Nautilus, you didn't have Universal, you didn't have any of that. All we had was the human body, rocks, you know, and things that just appeared around you. Forests, trees, ropes, those types of things. If you look at all the old bodybuilders of the 1800s or early 1900s, you will see that quite the physiques were developed back in the day with absolutely no scientific evidence, no transverse abdominis. I don't know how many of you are following the corrective exercise move and the certifications that want to make you physical therapists. Where were gladiators before the transverse abdominis was ever discovered? Oh my God. Bob Beamon set a 30-year-old long jump record without even knowing what the transverse abdominis was, what core bracing was, what the drawing in maneuver was. None of that. It was all intuitive. It was all natural, and it all worked. If you look at the art that was left behind from 2500 BC, 500 BC, all of those, 500 BC, all of those dates back there, all of them were real nice physiques. And I can imagine one or two being exaggerated, but come on, all of them exaggerated? They all look pretty awesome. Then you came into the 1900s, everything was free weight, everything. We didn't see the first machines until the 1960s when Nautilus and Universal came out. Nautilus came out with a cam to try to mimic the force and tension relationship of a muscle or a joint, and Universal came up with the varying resistance of the lever arm. Those were the two pieces of equipment that first came out. And of course, once you see that you can work your triceps while you're sitting down, once you know that you can train your quads and focus on your quads, sitting down, who's going to want to do lunges? Who's going to want to do squats and put 300 pounds to develop legs when you can sit down, so do some knee extensions, some leg curls, and some leg presses, and go to work and not feel like you're dying? Who's going to want to do alternating curls that require the entire body to stabilize? You can barely breathe, all right, with 50 pounders, when you can go sit on a preacher curl bench, put 100 pounds, do 10 sets of 10, hit about 5 tons of work at the biceps while you're watching Oprah. Hey, give me the Oprah viewing bicep work, and you know what? The funny thing is that it works even better than the alternating standing curl in terms of bicep hypertrophy. So once you start with that technology, the human mind automatically gravitates towards the easy way. And I don't have any problems with the easy way. What I do have problems is going one way and then expecting another result and wondering why you don't get it. So what happened was in the 60s and 70s, bodybuilding takes off, which really was our first thing, was bodybuilding, physical culture. And we start forgetting about why we got into it to begin with. Okay? Remember, people didn't get into functional culture and body culture due to aesthetics. They got into it for health, fitness, and performance. The first training ever was designed to create soldiers that were battle ready. Martial law, martial arts, martial training. So if you look at the first program training, it was for soldiers. Performance oriented. They didn't care how they looked. What they cared about is if they came back alive and if they won the war. And that was performance based. That wasn't aesthetic based. There was nobody that wanted to die with a nice six-pack. You know, hey, if I got my rolls on it, but I can outlast this guy, chances are I'm coming home alive. That was the main thing, right? So performance oriented. Now in the 1900s, we started creating nice bodies. Everybody wanted to look nice. The dieting, boom, boom. Here we go, bodybuilding begins. And of course, we took off into the bodybuilding era and we forgot our roots. Now, nothing wrong with that because the bodybuilding era brought on some great stuff. And the great stuff is that we can alter our bodies, create more muscle mass, create more strength, And we got a lot of tools to do it with. That's a great thing. All right? Because if you're dealing with a female that's combating osteoporosis, or if you're dealing with a special population that doesn't have the function to even stand on a single leg or do an anterior reach, those situations call for machine training. All right? And that is your great tool. But to try to take history and make a comparison between bodybuilding and function and see which one you want to choose would be the equivalent of you being a carpenter, having a toolbox and saying, one of those tools is what I'm going to use. Which one is it going to be? Well, if you choose the hammer, then the rest of the world becomes a nail, right? And we don't want to live like that because our clients are different jobs. Sometimes it's pounding a nail, and other times it's screwing a screw. Sometimes it's gluing two pieces of wood. Well, sometimes it's a 60-year-old woman fighting osteoporosis. Sometimes it's an 11-year-old boy trying to make the soccer team. And sometimes it's a CEO that needs to stay sharp and needs to stay fit to control his blood pressure, his cholesterol, etc. All demanding different tools. So if you look at the history, you'll see that we made a little left-hand turn on the bodybuilding, but the nice thing is that since the 90s, the functional training movement has been coming. And all we've been saying is, hey, not that bodybuilding is a bad thing, it's a great thing, but it's not the end-all be-all. You can't train bodybuilding with a tennis player and expect them to play better tennis. Okay, you can't expect to use bodybuilding with a grandma, and yes, you may put some good lean muscle mass on her, increase her bone mineral density, but if grandma wants to bowl, if grandma wants to play with the grandchildren, and now is moving in multiple planes, using multiple integrated movements, multiple muscle systems, you're not going to be able to create a more coordinated grandma working on the bicep at one time, the shoulder on the next day, the back on the next day. All right, so that's kind of the history as to how we became bodybuilding dominated and where functional training came along and what the purpose of functional training is. It's not to do away with bodybuilding. Functional training in its purest form is supported by the scientific principle of specificity. And if you look at the essentials from the NSCA organization, their essentials book, it is right there under biomechanics. Dr. Hartman gave us an exact explanation. For something to be functional, to have optimal transfer, it must look like the activity that you're trying to improve. So if you're trying to improve a pitcher, you don't want them doing sitting knee extensions, creating big quads and strengthening the quads from a sitting position while you're doing this, because that's not pitching. If you're trying to improve walking, sooner or later you better get them on one leg, because you can squat 600 pounds, but running and walking occur one leg at a time. And as soon as you plant your foot and lift this one, and you get a number 7 frame where the pelvis is here, the femur is here, and that degree of stability is necessary to take your next step, the A-frame of the squat does nothing for you. As soon as I do this, if I don't create that kind of stability, my locomotion is not optimized. So when you say, well, I want maximal transfer, can I use the squat? Yes, we use the squat for general strength. But as I get closer and closer and closer and more specific to the activity, take locomotion, what do I have to consider? And you don't have to be a biochemist or a biomechanist to do so. All you have to do is have baby eyes, which means you're seeing things for the first time. And you're not influenced by your past, by your perceptions, or by tradition. You're going to look at it and say, what am I looking at? What are they doing? For example, a lot of you are concerned and hear the discussions of, should we flex the back when we're down here? Should we flex and rotate? Because you guys know that flexion and rotation are the worst things you can do to the back. And you must avoid that at all costs. You hear it from the doctors. Use your legs when you pick up something. Don't bend your back, bend your knees. Yeah? Where are those doctors when their wives are picking up the baby out of the crib? Because even with the crib rail down, a 5'6" woman like my wife, the crib rail is right above the belly button. Now, how are you going to bend your knees and pick up the baby? You bend your knees, you clock your chin on that thing. What do you have to do? The rail position dictates that you must flex at the upper lumbar, lower thoracic level. You better do it. And you as a trainer better understand that, and you don't need to be a a PhD professor to go, she's flexing her back. And you know what? The legs can't help in this particular instance. I wonder what she looks like when she's putting the baby inside the car seat. I wonder what that looks like. And then if you're a weird guy like me, you follow your wife or your mom or somewhere around to the places like the dryer. How do they get to the towels deep, deep in the dryer? You got to flex and rotate, because you guys know if you do your own laundry, you know what that looks like. Me, I'm a weirdo. I've actually measured it. And it's something in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 inches from here to the back side of the drum. Maybe we have a big dryer at home because we're a family of 6, but nonetheless, it is a distance that my wife has to cover in here. So, if we look at bodybuilding, what bodybuilding movement deals with that situation? And we can come up with tennis and golf and playing in the playground with your children. We can come up with anything. I'm just giving you something basic that nobody can deny. I'm giving you gravity. I'm giving you something that everybody can say, yeah, I've seen that. Can't deny that. How are you going to teach that? How are you going to teach this movement? Where gravity pulls you into flexion, and then you have to control flexion in the sagittal plane. As soon as you turn in the transverse, you got to control the frontal. All right, and now when you go like this, here's a sequence of event. Support foot is the left foot. And up you go. From the soleus, the gastroc, the hamstring. Left glute. And from the left glute, now you're crossing quadratus, latissimus. Now you've connected the opposite shoulder. And all of that muscle group has to stretch so you can get that towel. By the way, it's the same muscle group if you're going to your backhand in tennis. By the way, it's the same muscle group if you're taking a hot line drive down third base. And it's the same muscle group if you're bowling. And it's the same sequence. Slightly different angles and planes of motion, but it's the same sequence. Show me one bodybuilding exercise that deals with that kind of cross neural pattern and that huge kinetic chain activity. Can't be done. Can't be done unless, as Gary Gray says, you can't learn to dance sitting on your pants. You can't get good at that movement unless you start doing things that look like that movement. And the principle of specificity dictates exactly that. So we're scientifically based, but the scientists have a little bit of problem crossing that bridge where they got to take their own medicine. You know, so now what we have is organizations that are scared of functional training because they have to then acknowledge the weaknesses of their academic approach. And they should welcome those weaknesses as opportunities to learn. But as you know, tradition is full of egos. And to sometimes come back and say, you know what, maybe we weren't right in that issue. Maybe we got to open the doors to these possibilities and this method of thinking. So a lot of people take that as a blow. Me, if I could be wrong every day, I would love it, because that means I would be learning so fast that I couldn't even keep it in my brain. Other people's, you know, to be wrong is just more than their egos can take. So as professionals, I urge you guys to understand your history, understand the strength of everything, understand that your whole bodybuilding thing is not good or bad. It's another tool. It could be the hammer, it could be the plier. Functional training is another tool. I think functional training is the huge umbrella. And I think true functional training would incorporate bodybuilding as one of its approaches and modalities. Yes? So let's say that you're a functional mind. You're a functional mind. You want results. You want to do things that meet the function of the outcome. So let's say that you have a female, 60 years old, weighs 95 pounds, right off the bat. What is she at risk of? Postmenopause, 95 pounds, 60 years old, 5'3". She's at risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, small bones, where if she takes a fall on the hip, it could mean her life, because most hip fractures in the elderly population don't make it out of the hospital. Because as soon as you sit them down for a prolonged period of time, they decline extremely quick, and many don't come out of it. So what what is one of the things that you certainly want to do with this woman? Bodybuilding, increase bone mineral density, increase tendon strength and tendon size, ligament, and muscles. Now, along with that additional weight, what would you want to do? Make sure that she can use that body any way she chooses. She can pick up her grandchildren, she can go out shopping in the mall for 4 hours, etc. So as trainers, you're looking at, what is my function? My function is I need a strong body that can move. Let's use bodybuilding for the strong, bigger body. It's easy, gives it to you rather quick. We don't have to wait 8 months to get bigger biceps and a bigger chest and bigger legs, man. You get them on knee extension, leg curls, leg presses, and you're rocking and rolling. Is that the only way you can go through bodybuilding? No. So if you don't have machines and you're operating out of a 1,200 square foot studios and you have dumbbells and barbells, done deal. You can do your squats, your lunges, and all your traditional dumbbell, barbell exercises. Same scenario, different population. Now you're working with an 18-year-old that just got signed with Ohio State, got a scholarship with Ohio State, all right? 18 years old, he's a 175-pound defensive back. He's covering people. In other words, he has to be big. For those of you who don't know a whole lot of football and don't care, he's one of those positions that they got to be a gazelle. They got to be really fast. But by the same token, if they're 165, 170 pounds, they're not pretty big. They need to be a little bigger. Maybe you need to put on 10 pounds over the summer. What are you going to do with this guy? Stand him on a stability ball? You better get busy. You better get busy with some modalities that'll put some muscle on this kid quick. What are you going to choose for the bicep? Preacher curl. What are you going to use for the legs? Whatever's easiest, whatever he likes the most, and whatever he can give me the most amount of work. I have no problems doing any one of our leg machines. If that's going to give me 10 sets instead of 7, I want the 10 sets. I want the volume. What am I going to be doing at the same time that I'm putting additional weight on this guy? With proper nutrition, with possibly the use of some supplements like creatine, nutrient timing, all of those issues. What are we going to be doing? Well, this guy is an athlete, right? Football player, defensive back. He needs to backpedal, cut, run, hit, avoid, quick step, lateral changes of direction, all that stuff. What gives me that? Number one, movement skill. Okay? And to break down things into its pure element, what does movement skill require? Movement. What does movement require? What is the first thing that happens before you even blink your eye? And this has been proven scientifically. Huh?
Visualization.
Visualization, what else? I'm thinking about how the body moves in sequence. What's the first thing to move in the body? What is the body trying to do before it can move? It has to do what? Stabilize. All right? Stabilize. And Hodges's and Cresswell's work in Australia have proven that the core musculature, now whether it's the transverse abdominis, internal obliques, external obliques, rectus abdominis, I'm not even arguing that. Hodges and McGill can fight till the cows come home, and I'm not going to be there to watch it. I have no interest in if it's the transverse abdominis and the internal obliques. I don't care. They care. I don't. Suffice it to say that it's the core and that the body moves from the inside out. And you go, well, scientifically we can come up with papers and discuss that, but logic, I want gravity. Why would that make sense from a logical perspective? Think about this. Okay? And this is one of the reasons that we're free to create and we're free to think. This is one of the things we thought of, and well, that's undeniable. What is the most important system in the body that tells the body when we're going to do something, how to do it, etc., outside of the brain? The most important communication system we have outside of the brain, which is engulfed in your skull and you can't do any more to protect it. It's already protected. What is it? Spine. The vertebral column. That's where you get the message from in here, and you go out and you say, all right, you first, all of you sing in, you stop. That's what gives us the motor pattern, right? Now, isn't it strange that the most important communication system that the body has for dictating movement and reaction is encased in the most unstable structure, skeletal structure that the body has? I mean, if we really wanted it protected, wouldn't we have like a bone from the brain to your butt? One bone, like a big femur like this. Put the spinal column in between, and we do the same thing we did for the brain. It's protected, chill. No need for core stabilization because you've got this one bone and everything is stabilized. But we've got 24 areas to get into trouble. Right? So isn't that weird? That here's this thing that must be protected inside the most unprotected area of the body. And now you ask, well, why was the design like that? And it was designed like that so we can have the movement variety that we have. Because 24 segments that move in the frontal plane, in the sagittal plane, and in the transverse plane does some pretty cool stuff. And if you want to see what it does, just go to Cirque du Soleil. I recommend Mystere wholeheartedly. All right? Go see Cirque du Soleil and watch what a body can do. And it can do that because we have this very unstable structure that houses this very important system. And before we drive that strong leg that we developed with the leg press and with the knee extensions and leg curls, before we go in here, the body says, all right, we're going to be driving down on the floor. The energy is going to come back up, okay, through Newton's third law of motion. It's going to come back up, and that hip is going to take off in that direction. Well, I'm thinking the shoulders are going to follow. Well, what connects the hip to the shoulders? How about when I plant here, and I turn, and here comes this arm? Boom! Based on the force I generated with this leg. Because you can't pitch on a wall, on a slide. You can't pitch on wet floor. You need contact with the ground and ground reaction. That's why we wear cleats in a lot of sports. So we can just be glued to the ground. So when we pump, the ground gives us back all this energy, and we're able to transmit. All right? It's always from the bottom up. But before we press on the bottom, we have to make sure that this is stable. Because if the hips go and there's instability at the SI joint, we got issues. We got lumbar herniation issues. We have ligamentous issues in the SI joint. We have lots of problems. So here you are. Bodybuilding will create, especially machine bodybuilding. The barbell and dumbbell versions are much more functional. But the machine bodybuilding will create individual players. All right? So imagine if you had a great football team, all-stars, every position, like the Pro Bowl. Every position has the best football player in that position in the league. But you never huddle. You never call a play. So here we are. This is my team. We go 54 red right. And you guys go, great. What the hell is that? Okay? And that is traditional bodybuilding. So when you have machines, you don't have the necessity to coordinate from the inside out. The body doesn't have to coordinate the spine. So when you create these all-star muscles and you try to integrate them and you say, and by the way, your limiting factor on performance is that huddle. That ability to say something and everybody know exactly where they're going, where the play is going. It's going to the right. It's a pass. It's this. It's that. You block this person. You run this direction. And that is the essence of functional training. It's called neural engramming. Neural engramming. And when you engram a pattern over and over again, you get what is termed neuromuscular efficiency. These are all big terms that allow you to charge $100 an hour. Because you can't charge $100 an hour for coordination training, right? That's like, well, you're just going to make my kid coordinate? Can he ride a bike and play and practice basketball and get that? They go, yeah, but then I wouldn't make any money. So I got to tell you that your kid's getting neuromuscular efficiency so you can pay me the $75. Isn't that insane? What if you saw some of the senior population and you saw some of them working out here? What if we saw one of those two lovely people skipping, just happy, down the sidewalk? You know, imagine that picture, 80 years old, just skipping, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What would society say about them? The police would be called pretty quick because, you know, we'd think that they're this close to being serial killers, right? They're insane. But we can bring them in here, charge them $75 to do fall prevention training, senior training, and then it's all right if they skip and act a fool in here. As a matter of fact, we got them doing sillier things than skipping here. But that's okay, because it's done in the name of neuromuscular training. neuromuscular efficiency, corrective exercise, fall prevention. Folks, it's all the same thing. What we're doing is providing PE for a population that's lost it. And it ain't that complicated. And it really doesn't matter why the right knee goes in or goes out. And it doesn't matter. Half the diagnoses that they're giving you are wrong. Okay? We won't name any organizations, but some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with organizations that do a lot of assessments. Yes? Okay. We'll do a little test here to see where the industry is going. It's part of the history. And it's part of where you got to sit down and go, all right. I think we've overcomplicated this stuff here. It's really PE. Let's watch it happen. I squat, my right knee goes in. According to some of these evaluations that are put out there by physical therapists and doctors and, you know, the board of directors and the executive council, what is a symptom? What would be the problem? Come on, talk to me, because I know some of you are certified. Don't make me start calling out names. If my right knee goes in when I squat, that is a symptom of what weak and what strength? What? They say weak VMO. They say tight adductors. They say inhibited glute medius. Synergistic, adductor or hamstring. Look, if the knee caves in, all right, nobody knows, and a little computer can't tell you if it caved in because of the foot, it caved in because of the hip. At the end of the day, PE, physical education, gravity. Who controls the knee? The butt. Simple. The butt goes from your SI joint, comes outside, and attaches to the femur. If that knee goes in, it's because this muscle that controls internal rotation and adduction of the femur is out to lunch. And is it any wonder that it's out to lunch when we sit on it for 14 hours? And then come in and wonder why the heck we can't run, we can't walk, we can't swing a golf club, yeah, whatever the hell they use, all right? You know how close I am to golf, right? I look like a golfer, yes. You know what I'm saying? So what's this tight adductor? If they had a tight adductor that was tight enough to bring that leg in a squat, do you know what they would be walking like? And you don't see them doing that. And plus, they couldn't sit down and do what you're doing. They certainly couldn't sit down that way. And I guarantee you, you take anybody whose knees cave in, mostly women, because of the Q angle predisposes them to inward translation of the knee, which is knees coming in. And if they do that, all right, sit them down and say, open your legs. Make sure that they're properly clothed. And watch, they all can open their legs like this. So how could it be tight adductors? If they can sit down with their legs open. Here, crisscross applesauce, tell them to sit like that, like little Indians. And they can all do it. So it obviously can't be tight adductors, right? Weak glute minimus is the next thing. Wonderful. Now, if the butt is composed of the minimus, maximus, and medius, how are they isolating one of those guys? Explain to me how you can tell me that it's a weakness on the medius or on the minimus or on the maximus and the other two are not involved. That's like having three guys in a Volkswagen, you know, and you talking to one of them and somehow isolated that one where the other two couldn't hear. Impossible. Impossible. So, how does that translate to the training? Very simple. If I have a problem coming from that Volkswagen, say I'm a police officer, I got fire coming from that Volkswagen, I'm not asking which guy's shooting at me. They're all three at fault by proximity. I'm blowing up the Volkswagen and my problems are over. Translate that to training the butt. If the knee caves in, you blast away at all of them. How are you going to tell me that this lateral reaching lunge affects one and not the other two? Impossible. Well, what about the sagittal reaching lunge? Which one does that emphasize? How about the rotational reaching lunge? Which one does that emphasize? We got research on that to validate that? We don't. And the answer is it uses all three of them. So if you got that knee caving in, the right knee caving out, it doesn't matter. Blame the butt. Hit that butt front, center, sideways, and rotation. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to get much better performance. Easy. It's easy, folks. All right? The functional training model that we've developed here is based around what the body does. All right, so now that you know the history, now that you know kind of our approach to functional training, now you'll see our model is based on that approach. To train the body functionally, you have to do 4 basic things because that's all the body does. Remember, we have one driving exam no matter what car you drive. Why? Because the principles of driving are consistent regardless of whether you drive a Volkswagen, an SUV, or a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. The car dictates how fast you'll go, the car dictates how fast you'll turn the corner, and the car dictates how fast you'll stop. That means your client dictates what you're going to do with your training, not you. I want to see if I can take one of my seniors and say, all right, I'm going to dictate what you do. I need you to jump right there on that box that Gary's sitting on. Go ahead, because I'm in control of this. I'm dictating what you do. Jump. It ain't going to happen. Why? Because you got a Volkswagen, and it's incapable of doing 180 miles an hour on I-95. It's not going to happen. So what do you have to do? You have to tell that person, I need you to jump on this step here, because that I think you can do. You've just asked the Volkswagen to do 55, 65, no problems. Okay? So, what are the driving principles? What are the operational principles of this human body? What does it do? How do I know if I'm training it functionally? You got to train it to do 4 things, and we call those the pillars of human movement. All human movement, I don't care if it's picking up a child, tying your shoe, or throwing a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. It does it by doing 4 things. Number 1, locomotion. And that is going from point A to point B, which involves one leg at a time, because that's the way we locomote. It involves unilateral changes of direction. It involves shuffling, as if you're going inside a movie theater. All right? It involves running. It involves skipping. Anything you can do on a court, in your house, in the backyard, on the beach. Locomotion. So look at it and say, what type of locomotion? What are the forces? What are the speeds? What are the foot positions? Toes in, toes out, one leg at a time, 2 legs simultaneous, movement in the sagittal plane, movement in the frontal plane. Just look at it. You don't have to know anything about the sport, anything about the activity. Look at it and say, these are some of the characteristics that I have to be good at in order to do this. 1 or 2 or 3. You come up with exercises that hit those characteristics, you're off and running. Don't overcomplicate it, because it's that simple. Hit those 3, train them really hard, and let the boys decide the outcome on Saturday. Let God sort it out. The boys will settle it in athletics, and the girls, let them settle it on Saturday and Sunday. You kick back, you've done your job. Okay, now, the second pillar, level changes. We got to go up and down. If your belly button's going up and down, it's a level change. Pick up a coin, tie your shoe, shoot into an opponent, pick up an opponent, pick up a child, anything. Level changes. That involves your squatting, your lunging, your staggered stances, and yes, sometimes your single leg stances. So what does that mean? It means you got to train all that stuff. Okay? Third pillar, pushing and pulling. Here's where we have the freedom to forget about the pec minor and what kind of protraction is involved in the shoulder and what are the rotator cuffs and what they do. I'm dying to get that stuff out of my drawers because I can't even keep them up in here. It's irrelevant. We learned anatomy the wrong way. We learned anatomy muscles first. And the bodies don't operate muscles first. If you guys would have learned movement first, you train the movement, the muscles are in there. You learn the muscles first and try to come up with the muscles. In a movement, it's the hard way to reverse engineer something. So if we would have been learning something like, and I don't care if it's the 4 pillars, the 10 movements, the 10 commandments, I don't care what it is. If we would have been learning basic movements first and learned to train those movements, it would have been a slam dunk. The muscles would have already been involved, and we wouldn't have to even know them. We could know them to be more educated. Thank you, sir. Thank you. May you be blessed with many children, as I have been. Oh, no, you want them now. All right, so, all right, push and pull. Look, if the hand is going away from the body, it's a push. If the hand is coming near the body, it's a pull. If you have to ask, it ain't important. It's that simple. Now it doesn't really matter. Hey, am I working the upper fibers of the chest and white twitch and red twitch and brown twitch and fast and this? What is that? And exactly, what do I do to work fast twitch? Well, number one, if you want to even deal at that level, you work fast. But say that it's white fibers, which doesn't give you any speed connotations. And you go, what's that? Oh, these fibers that are meant to like move really quick. It's like, dude, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to increase vertical jump. Then friggin' jump. Jump different ways. Jump on a box, jump over a hurdle, do heavy stuff slow, and then combine it with fast stuff. But you better be moving quick, because if you don't move quick, specificity says you don't get good at quick, right? So what does it matter? How about the energy systems? Well, is that working the glycolytic? Is it fast glycolytic or slow glycolytic? Is it past the ATP? Because you know that once it goes through 10 seconds into 10.25 seconds, it's no longer ATP. It's something else. And there's no in-betweens, because these guys go 6 to 10. And then it's 15 to, well, what happened at 11, 12, 13, and 14? You're in metabolic limbo. We don't know what you're in yet. What is it that you're getting ready for? If you're getting ready to run 1 mile quick, it's one of the things we're going against tradition in the endurance world. If you want to run 1 mile quick, there's no need to run 3 miles. 3 miles slow doesn't do anything from 1 mile fast. If you want to get to 42-inch verticals, jumping repetitively many times at 10 inches is not going to get it for you, is it? Same thing, it's logic. Big explosive movements. Get your energy system to do what they need to do. If you're a wrestler and you're wrestling 2 periods and you go intermittent, hard stuff, medium stuff, low stuff, hard stuff, then you train eventually like that. Eventually, you have to train like that. That is specificity. So if you train specific and you take your view of function, like here, boom, you drop the bottle, gravity, I got it. If you take that approach to your programming, it becomes extremely effective. A lot of fun and simple. You're free to create. Really, there's no real no's. There's only explanation why. Because even if you're telling me, look, I'm going to run 3 miles just to get in shape for my mile training, although I could say I could find a flaw in that, but if you explain this to me and say, you know what, I'm 20 months out from the season, or I'm sorry, I'm 8 months out from the season. That's a long time, 20 months out, huh? It's like, I'm not going to compete in something until I'm graduated from college, and that's when I'm going to compete, right? Let's say 8 months out, and you say, look, part of the initial preparation, just to get them out, get them jogging, get them used to it, I'm going to use 3 miles. Now, we can argue, is that the optimal way? But that's not wrong, because you've explained it to me. That's not specific. It's very general. And I choose to do it that way because I have good experience, my people like it, it's easy to do in my gym, etc., etc., etc. You just gave me a rational explanation as to why you're going to do something. So although 3 mile training may not be appropriate for 1 mile performance, it may be appropriate somewhere in the paradigm, all right, where you can justify it. Okay? So don't get used to the yes and no's or get into the absolutes, get into the reasons why. And if you can create a rational explanation, then at least listen to someone and try it yourself, all right? So we've gone through 3 pillars: locomotion, level changes, push-pull. The last one, which ties very nicely in with the first one, is rotation, which is the most important pillar ever, ever. Without rotation, you're in deep trouble. The first thing a kid learns to do in movement, okay, and by the way, they move the core first in the womb. That's also been scientifically validated. So it's inside out. Everything is inside out. When they come out, they crawl, and they crawl for a huge reason. And that is because that is the most fundamental rotational movement that they can do without standing or without anything. And think about it, even before they crawl, what do? They go from their back to what? What does that involve? Rotation. So before they even know how to do anything, they have to fire the core, turn the shoulders, fire the core, and get the hips over. Okay? Rotation. It's the first thing they learn. And it's been shown that children who skip the crawling phase oftentimes have problems with reading, verbal skills, etc. And I'm a witness to that, maybe by coincidence, but my first one skipped crawling and walked at about 8.5 months. Incredible biomotor skills. Threw a football at 6.5 months. He couldn't even stand. He stood on a chair and threw one of those little air footballs that weigh about an ounce and pegged the girl about 5 feet out right in the forehead because she was saying, "Show me the ball." You know, she thought she was going to dribble it, you know? And he just whap, knocked her right in here. Nothing happened, you know, it was just fun. And at the age of 2, he was throwing that same little football across this room from the end of the living room right to the couch. And all I had to do was sit there and we play catch. And he'd pitch it, bang, bang, bang. But late to read, late on verbal skills. My other 3, great crawlers, phenomenal crawlers. Through the roof, they won't shut up. And they articulate beyond their years. So maybe it was coincidence, but I'm a firm believer. And plus there's some scientific evidence. And if you want to read functional training at its infancy and how it relates to how we process cognitive information and how our children develop, pick up this book, Smart Moves. Smart Moves. You go to Amazon.com, I think it's $16.95, brand new publication, 2005, updated from 1995, which was her first publication. Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head. And it talks about integrated movement, movement that crosses the main line of the body, how important it is to anchor abstract thoughts. And she points out that that's the reason that you doodle when you're on the phone and you start going through these like squares, and it's never, you know, you don't write a poem when you're on the phone with somebody. You always create these circles and squares and these geometric shapes, and you go over them and over them. Have you done that? Like you burn a hole in the paper, over them and over them? Sometimes where you stand up and you start moving. This is why we move our hands. Okay? So it talks about movement, and you got to wonder now with some of the science that's out there now with brain lesions. Brain lesions can be predicted now through movement deficiencies. And here's the killer. When they correct the movement, the area in the brain that has the lesion, either it's greatly reduced or new neural connections have worked themselves around the lesions and connected 2 areas of the brain that were not previously connected. And this is done hardwire. Okay? The neural connections of the brain based on movements, okay, generate within minutes. And they, through brain mapping, they can actually have seen in primate studies where one learns a drill, a skill, like within 10 minutes, they see areas of the brain lighting up and new neural connections being made. So it is not as stagnant as we once thought. We thought that we had a hardware and that was it. The hardware never changed. It was the software that changed. No, no, no. And movement is a key stimulus to change the hardwire or the hardware of the brain. So Smart Moves talks about all that. So just, you know, just the different things that you have to look at and you go, wow. And when you have that body of knowledge to draw from, when you have all these possibilities to help you create and to give you that sense of wonder where, wow, I wonder if we can do this. I wonder if this training is impacting that. You know, ADD, ADHD. Right? There's a system of training called Brain Gym, and they'll refer to it in Smart Moves. Things like free figure 8s, cross crawling, different exercises like that are thought to integrate the brain. And 2 and 3 minutes worth of these movements will take ADD kids, ADHD kids, center them down where they can continue to read and take exams. And Carla Hannaford has done all this, and you will read all about this, how movement is used to reintegrate and recenter the focus and brain with ADD and ADHD kids. That'll blow your mind. Blow your mind. And you say, well, if it works with these types of cognitive deficiencies, maybe they're not deficiencies. Maybe we're just teaching the wrong way. Because kids don't learn by sitting down and being quiet and paying attention. Kids learn by movement, discovery. That's how they learn. That's how they integrate things. You guys, think about this. So you can see how children learn. It's no different than how you learn. How many people here are what you call kinesthetic learners. In other words, you show me an exercise, I do it, I know it for life. You show me an exercise on video, or you show me a picture of an exercise, you can explain it till the cat comes home, I forget it. Yes or no? We're all here. If not, we wouldn't be wearing shorts in this business. We're movement people. We like movement more than most. And if you're like me, the closer you get to throwing up, the more you like it. For some ungodly reason. We don't know why. But we are in this field because we have a sense of kinesthetic. And if I show you an exercise, everybody wants to try it. That's why the workshops are the most popular segments of seminars. Show me. Show me. I don't care about the name. Biomechanics, who cares? Show me. Ooh, that's cool. Yeah, I feel that. Boom, it's yours for life. You take it back and you use it on Monday and it's yours. Yes? You just learned something cognitively through movement. And that is the way people function. If you want a kid to remember a tree, have them hang from it. Have them climb it. Have them feel it. Have them pull a branch off, a leaf. And you will be able to ask the kid anything you want about that tree. What's a bark? What does it feel like? Does it come off? How many leaves? What shape are the leaves? They'll be able to answer it. But if you read to a kid about a tree or show them a picture, they don't. So another reason for those of you that are working with the youth, which we are, at the NSCA we've started a special interest group just to deal with the youth of America and to try to get physical education back into the schools. Okay? If you're in that area of work, and I think everybody to some extent should give back to that area because our health and our future depends on it, keep that in mind. How movement impacts your kids' abilities to understand the world, learn, and express themselves. All right, so we got the history of fitness. We got how functional training kind of fits into that. We find the general movement skill that are needed to function, all right, which is the 4 pillars. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break, get you to stand up, get some coffee. Dunkin' Donuts is across the, but we're only going to give you about 7 minutes. So if you're going to go get your coffee, run. If you're going to go to the bathroom, you can walk. And we'll come back.